Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Perfectly Mentored. I'm your host, Jason Portnoy. My guest today is a #1 New York Times bestselling author of Who's Got Your Back and Never Eat Alone, and his newest book, Leading Without Authority, as well as a frequent contributor to the Harvard Business Review, Wall Street Journal, Fast Company, Forbes, Inc., Fortune, and other publications. He's an entrepreneur, founder and chairman of Ferrazzi Greenlight, and an executive team coach to some of the most prominent organizations in the world. His 20-year history of transforming C-suite executive teams has made him an agent of transformation and among the world's greatest and most sought-after coaches. Our guest, a great treat, Keith Ferrazzi, welcome.
Jason, it's great to be here. Thank you very much.
You and I were just talking offline for a second, and I told you a story that when I graduated and I got my first job, before I realized I was an entrepreneur and I couldn't work for other people, I came across your book, Never Eat Alone. And it was one of the first business books that I've read. And I remember it, I just graduated school. I never read a textbook. So let alone now I'm reading business books. It was one of the first business books that I've read. And I remember it leaving a long lasting impression on me. So I'm super excited to have you on and to dive deep with you and to pick your brain. And I think the audience is in store for a big treat.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well. And yeah, I mean, that is the definition of an entrepreneur, somebody who can't work for anybody else.
So then I'm definitely it. Let's talk about that book for a second and the overall theme of networking. What does networking look like today? The world today, COVID, it changed. How can people network? How can we build relationships? What are some of the tips you have to navigate the new world and for people to build up their contacts?
Well, first of all, it hasn't changed. The fundamental principles of deepening relationships in service of creating extraordinary things is still the same. When I wrote Never Eat Alone, I was a young man that had struggled all of his life, being brought up poor, watching my unemployed father struggle in Pittsburgh in the 70s as the steel industry was collapsing. And, I wasn't born into wealth. I had to create my own nepotism. I had to create my own relationships to open doors of opportunity. And I did that the old-fashioned way. And that was when I would meet people, I always had one mindset, and that is, how do I be of service? How do I be of service? And that still exists today. I actually think that as you and I were talking, more people have slivers of time for you today than they ever did before. In the olden days, in my very first version, Never Eat Alone, I used to say, what can you lose? Just ask for 15 minutes and a cup of coffee. Well, it got to the point where people were asking me for 15 minutes and a cup of coffee, and I wasn't able to give it to them because my life had gotten so busy, and leaving my own home for a cup of coffee with somebody was too much of a chore, and there was too much loss of time. But today, dipping in with somebody briefly is a heck of a lot easier. Not saying that the most important people in the world have 15 minutes for you as well, but if you lead with generosity, if you identify what is it that you have to offer these individuals, and I call that currency, but that's true in everything. I mean, I now coach the CEOs of some of the most powerful organizations in the world and their executive teams. That's what we do. We have been cracking the code of how teams produce extraordinary outcomes. We've been doing that for 20 years. If you have an agenda in your life, you need to determine who your team is. One could call that just your network to achieve your agenda, whatever that is. And it could be a missionary type of a goal or objective where you're trying to change the world in some way, or it could be getting some shit done inside of a company. Or it could be starting a new business or leading your business. You have to figure out who is the team that you need to achieve that. It's people you work for you, people that you'd like to work with you, that you may not pay, people who you need to move through in order to get something approved. All of those individuals on your team, you need to lead with service. And I think that's probably one of the greatest lessons that people took away from Never Eat Alone and my new book, Leading Without Authority. If you want to lead in this world, if If you want to lead in this world, you're going to lead making the assumption that nobody has to follow you, but you have to earn the right to lead.
But another thing you talk about in that book is, and it's one of the hardest things, and I've seen this among so many different people, myself included at times, is to give without that expectation, right? I think you call it in the book, like, don't keep score. What advice do you have for people who just, can't shake that what's in it for me thought when they go out and trying to, or someone asks for help, or they go out and try to offer service, they try to always think what's in it for them?
Yeah, get used to being mediocre because you deserve it. That's my advice. If you literally are so effing self-centered and self-focused that you can't get out of your own way to reach out in the world and be of service to other people, then get used to being mediocre. Now, I get pissed off about that because, I'm not sure it's always coming from the perspective of self-service. I believe it's most likely, and this is where empathy kicks in for me, it's coming out of insecurity and fear and scarcity. But I found out early on that, other people are busy. Your agenda is not theirs. Get over yourself. You need to figure out what other people's agendas are, what their wishes and dreams are, what their hopes and aspirations are. And once you identify and give a damn enough, and it becomes a habit, a ritual, it's something that you practice enough that it just becomes constant. What can I do for you? Then people start to open up. There's in the new book, Leading Without Authority, we've done a lot of research since the book Never Eat Alone. And while Never Eat Alone helps you open up opportunity and your network, Leading Without Authority makes you great. Leading Without Authority makes you get shit done in the world by navigating and inviting resources to create great things with you. All right. Since this pandemic has happened, if any of you have not recreated your business model, birthed an entirely new business, then you have failed to take advantage of one of the greatest opportunities that's existed in your lifetime and anybody's lifetime that's alive today. And it's not too late because this isn't stopping. This world that we're in today is going to keep going for many months. And we have rebooted society. And the question is, how do you reboot yourself with it? And by the way, that is what I believe fundamentally, that's my mission right now. I want to help people level up, reboot, become agents of transformation. I have become a movement leader. I've become a coach to the most rarefied individuals. And I want to teach people how to be able to do that for themselves. And that was the first book was Leading Without Authority that helps you do that. And so I know what it's like to be afraid. I know what it's like not to have resources. I know what it's like not to be able to pay rent back in the day, right? I know what it's like to literally work from your car. One of my summer out of Yale, actually, I was a Yale University student, but I was living in my car for the summer because I couldn't afford to have one of the fancy internships that all the rich kids could afford in the same way. If I wanted one of those internships that were really coveted that didn't pay anything, then I had to find other ways to make money and survive. So I lived out of my car and I ate cocktail weenies off of a happy hour menu as my primary meal in the summer. All of that is stuff I had to do. So I get it. I get what it's like to be afraid and not have enough. But at the same time, I also knew that my path to having extraordinary success and being able to make a difference and make my parents proud who sacrificed so much was going to be my ability to enlist other people in my journey. And I did. I enlisted the CEO of Deloitte when I was just a kid. And as a result, I became the chief marketing officer worldwide of Deloitte by the time I was 30, right? The youngest officer in the Fortune 500 at Starwood Hotels. So, you've got to recognize that the path to your success is through and with other people. You focusing on yourself is a prescription for failure.
I love that answer. And you've coached, you were just saying on these times and how to transition and leading without authority to so many high profile people and, big companies. So my question to you is, for the listeners that are listening that aren't big Fortune 500 companies, what advice can they learn from some of the big companies on how you're coaching them to pivot? And then what advice do you think you could give those huge C-suite executives of these big companies, lessons that you picked up from, listening to the smaller guys?
Yeah. Again, to me, it's not big or small. It's people. And it's always the same number. You as an individual need to start identifying your team to achieve greatness. So the first step is, do you know what your blue flame is? Do you know what your mission is? Do you know what you're trying to achieve in your business, in your charity, in your work, in your job? What are you trying to achieve? Is it transformational? One of my best friends, Peter Diamandis, he and I are on each other's team, so to speak. We're best friends. We were just talking late last night about the business he's creating, around vaccines for COVID. And he was giving me some coaching about my new info products business that I'm creating, that we have some free offerings for those who stick around to this, to go to keithferrazzi.com/jport. The end of the day, the small group of people who are going to help you co-create what the vision is for the business, is what you need to be focusing on. My trainer, Greg, guy comes to my house every day, and I've got an outdoor gym on my roof, and he coaches me in training. And while we talk, I'm like, dude, if during this time you're still selling your time by the hour, you're missing the biggest opportunity. He's a buff guy and he's a vegan. I said, there are businesses waiting to be birthed to bring plant-based fuel to humans in a powerful way, whether that's info products or diets or home delivery, food systems, whatever it is. I mean, there is businesses in what you are passionate about. And so I'm kicking his butt and I'm saying, come up with a new business model. So I'm on his team and I'm paying him to be on his team. Like, I'm paying him $100 a day to train me. And in the process, I'm coaching him just like I would coach the CEO of Delta Airlines when Delta is asking the question, how do we emerge after a 90% reduction in revenue in a 30% smaller company? It's like, okay, so who's your team? Who's your team? Who are the individuals you're going to crack the code of? I've been around and I'm creative and I have a lot of answers, but I'm not trying to bring McKinsey level analysis. What I'm saying to you is answering the question of what your business model is, and the shift of your business model exists in a few key individuals. Who are those key individuals? You start small, you start with the people that you have access to, and then you broaden. But you've got to be methodological about creating that team. And along the way, ideally, what you do is you enlist those individuals and you serve them, and then they open their networks to you and they open their business models to you. I mean, Peter Diamandis and I constantly serving each other. Just the other day, he had me on his mastermind, right, where I was marketing to leaders, right, and future leaders. I was marketing my services through his network because it was a win-win. I was teaching them how to be more effective leaders of their teams, right, which is what I'm here to do for you and your audience. And then in exchange, I'm constantly opening my network for Peter. So there's this win-win that's always available in those relationships. But I've got my coach is Peter Diamandis. I don't know if you know Peter, but he wrote the book Abundance. He's massive transformation thinker. Peter is my coach on my new business. I could never afford that, right? And he can't afford me, but I coach him and his team. So my area of expertise is team effectiveness and leadership. And his area of expertise is exponential technology. We're each other's coaches. Who are yours? Right? Who are yours? Who are you spending time with? Who are you opening up your aperture to be of service to?
I was just going to say, that's not just a business move. That's a life move. Who's going to be with you on your journey to be where you want to go?
Yeah, I've been dating somebody on and off for 3 years now, and trying to figure out that relationship. And I've enlisted tons of people as my co-pilot and helping figure that out, right? And if you're single out there, that's what a wingman is, or a wingwoman, right? It's somebody who's there, no matter what goal you have. There's a set of individuals you're co-creating with. And I think in a remote world, we've done $2 million worth of research on how leadership and collaboration in leadership is better and easier in a remote world than it ever was. Number one, you can team out. I call it teaming out like this. You can make members of your team people that you would have never afforded before because they can drop in and out so easily. Also collaboratively, there are superfoods of collaboration, which is psychological safety. If you want to create psychological safety among a team that you're leading, again, the team you're leading doesn't mean people to report to you. It means a group of people that you're co-creating great things with, right? So if you want to create psychological safety, you want people to be bold, tell you the truth, speak up, wrestle with ideas. The breakout room in Zoom meetings is a powerful tool to create psychological safety, because if you've got a room of 5 people, you're probably doing most of the talking if you're the leader. You take a room of 5 people, pose a powerful question, let them break out into 2 groups of 4, 2 groups of 2, with you waiting and doing some email while they're ideating. They could go away for 5 minutes, talk to each other, and come back, and they'll crack codes that they wouldn't have done in a big room. There's so many nuggets of insight on how you could be I was talking to one of the officers of Target this morning, and we are writing an article together about how we both believe that you can create a more highly collaborative organization in a remote environment than you could physically. Everybody else assumes that's not true. They think that you need to bump up against people in an office to be collaborative. That's the lazy way. If you're a little bit more purposeful, then you can be a very powerful collaborative leader in a remote environment. And that's the class we're offering. That's the class we're offering to your members, which is a free download at keithferrazzi.com/jport, a free download of that masterclass for your members.
And I want to talk about that in a second, but I just want to jump back for a second. For the listeners who are like, hey, I would love a Keith Ferrazzi on my team, right? That would be a great team member. What are some ways to develop those relationships with people who are on, I guess, a different level, right? For example, relationships with best-selling authors or CEOs, for people who are, let's say, just starting their businesses.
You have to ask yourself, what is your currency? What is your currency? So, I launched 3 new businesses during the pandemic. 3 new businesses. You do a few Google search on anybody you're wanting to get to know better, and you start to look and see what they're doing, right? You would see that Keith Ferrazzi just launched a product that I'm selling for $1,000 for leaders, and it's an online info product, right? Then I've got products that, I used to charge $500,000 was an entry-level engagement for me and my team. Now I've created a $8,000 boot camp to coach a team, the whole team, on being more effective. And whether I'm not delivering that 8K, but one of my coaches is, right? And it's the same formula that I'm bringing to General Motors and Verizon and others. So I've got this whole suite of products now available. What I'm starting to do is to create online lead generation. My lead generation used to happen through physical networking at the C-suite, places like TED and Davos and et cetera. But now I'm creating online lead streams, and that is brand new to me. There's a kid out there. I was talking to a young man over the weekend who called me. He used to be an intern for me years ago. His name's Ryan. And he called me and he said, I saw some of your Facebook ads and I think they suck. He said, I've started an agency, a media agency. I'd be happy to advise you for a month on the future of, so I've got 2 businesses. He goes, you pick one of the 2 businesses. I'll advise you on the future of that business in terms of making your ads more resonant, making conversions go up, et cetera. He said, I'll do it for free for a month or 2, but I'd like you to open up your network for me, and I'd like you to be a case study. And I'm like, you know what? I'd be happy to hear you out. Absolutely. Right? So I'm happy to. I know more chief marketing officers. I was a chief marketing officer twice. I know more chief marketing officers than almost anybody out there. And I would probably be quite impactful for this kid if I took him up on that offer. So, but I'm considering it. So there you go. You just do a little bit of research. You figure out how you can be helpful to somebody. You offer your support. Could be research even. Just, hey, are you thinking about starting a new business that you want somebody to do some competitive research? So all of our work is in the area of transforming leaders in teams, whether those be formal or informal teams. If somebody came to me and said, I would love to do a research project and scour and identify everybody who is doing team coaching. I know, Lencioni does team coaching, a few others do, but very few. This is a very rarefied business that I'm in. Somebody wanted to do a big competitive research study. I'd take that, right? I haven't really spent a lot of time on that. And I would get to know that young woman or man who would do that. So here you go. I mean, it's so easy once you start being curious about how to be of service.
Yeah, and confident in what you have to offer, right?
Look, on that second piece, all it took was a young person with earnestness. It didn't even have a qualification. I'm just saying competitive research.
Yep.
What's that, right? The first one, yeah. I mean, that young man.
Are you surprised by how many people don't even spend any time? They'll just reach out to you and be like, "Hey, I'd love to help you," and they don't have any clue what you're up to or don't do any research.
Very few people reach out and say, "Hey, I'd love to help you." Most people reach out and say, "Hey, I'd like a job." Right? Most people, like you said earlier, people are schmucks. People don't understand that the world doesn't care about them. They need to care about the world, and then that earns the right for the world to care about them. And that's how I've lived my life. I've lived my life always worried about being of service to others. And as a result, I've had extraordinary success.
Let's shift gears for a second. For the business owners that are listening right now, we have a lot of remote workers, right? Or now a lot of businesses that are forced to work remotely, or now just said, hey, for the rest of the time, we're going to be working remotely. What can the leaders do? I know you've talked about certain principles that a leader must have during a remote time and yet a stressful time at the same time. Can you expand on it a little bit?
Yeah. So when the pandemic hit, I started a research project with Harvard that I said, leadership is going to change. I'm doing a webinar just on this topic with General Stan McChrystal, talking about the future of leadership in a post-pandemic world. The leadership will and is changing. And I wanted to document that in a massive book, in a research study. So I got the green light, and we've raised many hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this research. And again, I want to make it clear, when I wrote the book, Leading Without Authority, which I highly recommend your people buy, it's probably, people are saying it's my best work. And that's tough to sort of chew on because Never Eat Alone has been an ever-ready bestseller, 1 million copies, etc. But I kind of agree with them, because leading without authority makes you awaken to realize that we're all leaders. We're all leaders. We all have teams. Those teams may just not know that they're on our team yet. And that's up to us to enlist them and co-create extraordinary things for them and for us. So I don't really only want to speak to an existing leader right now. I want to speak to anybody who wants to be a leader of something, wants to create something. And to that end, one of the things that's changed in leadership, and it's something that networking has always done, which is recognizing that you have to earn the permission to lead. Your people are fatigued, frustrated, fractured, and they're stressed with the amount of work that they need to do right now, and always sitting behind the cameras and all that kind of stuff. You've really got to worry empathetically about how they're feeling. You've got to manage their energy better than ever before. Mental health crisis today is a real crisis. And for you just to say, well, everyone's has got to do more, that's not enough, because it's not their name on the door, it's yours, or it's not their name on the mission, it's yours. And so your ability to lift people's energy. Now, the style of leadership that I'm teaching is really quite novel. It's a style of leadership I call co-elevation. The idea is you You get into collaboration with somebody, but in the process, you both commit to going higher together. Very, very reminiscent, Jason, of Never Eat Alone, right? Committing to that being of service. But if you're a leader of a standing team, a real team that reports to you, you've got to earn their permission to lead them. You've got to build their energy. And then over time, it's just what I teach in Leading Without Authority and this new masterclass that people can attend. Over time, I want you to get your team to commit to doing that for each other. I've been working with a lot of companies and making them wake up to realizing that leaders are stressed as well. And you can't assume that the leader can bear the burden of all of the stress of leadership today. And I'm preaching something that I call, we need to move from overload of leaders to shared load, where leaders expect the team to step up more, collaborate more, own each other's support, own each other's accountability, are willing to give each other feedback. So this movement of the team up, and so many leaders are frustrated that their team won't step up. Well, damn it, you're not letting them. You're leading them in a way that keeps them stepped down. And, I'm keynoting the Inc. 5000 annual conference this year, and I could not be happier than to send this message to them, that as entrepreneurs, you've got to start stepping down off of your podium and being the hub and spoke of everything, and getting the team to step up and meet each other and you in a network of people achieving extraordinary things. Maybe that's too esoteric, but that's what we're teaching today, and it's helping organizations thrive in a highly disruptive world.
Do you think it's realistic for business owners to expect their employees to care as much as they do, and to put in the work as much as they do?
So,
without equity or without actually owning the business?
Yeah. Well, I think that we all have to recruit our associates into a mission that we're on. I mean, Tony Hsieh at Zappos, a buddy of mine, just being Zappos is a mission of how they run their company. They're changing the way companies are run, how employee engagement works. And I feel that as leaders, you've got to be purpose-driven. You've got to step your people up to a purpose. But at the same time, that's why you invest in them so much. If you invest in them enough, they will step up to meet you, and they'll invest in you. And they'll invest in the mission that you gave them to work on together. And a part of investing is inviting them into the decisions. If you're driving all the decisions, then it's not their company. It's not their decisions. It's yours. How do you co-create? And that's what we do in this, so in our sales cycle, we have this entry-level course that we offer for $1,000. And then there's a boot camp with the team. It's in that boot camp with the team, we offer a diagnostic tool where the team awakens and realizes that they own the success of the organization, but they also own each other's success, right? And then, in our sales cycle, we go from that boot camp, and then they can hire us as a coach on an ongoing basis. But that course up front is the entry point for you as a leader to say, am I able to lead my team and get them to step up in ways they've never done that before? And the answer is yes, we all can.
Yeah, I've spoken to so many business owners through the agency, and that seems to be like a big frustration amongst them is, my employees don't care, or they didn't get something in time. They're like, they clocked out, they left work, they didn't do it. Why can't they think about things the way I think about it? I'm like, because they don't make your salary. They don't have equity in the business. You can't expect them to care the way you do. It's not their business. So,
So then again, but that's because your leaders have a radically old, antiquated mindset. And that is the mindset is that it's your business and it's all on you. And the shoulder bearing and the direction giving and the feedback giving all is according to you. If you can't get your team to do that for each other, then you'll continue to be stressed. Your business will really not thrive. and you'll be capped in your growth. We've identified 6 attributes of high growth companies, and they are all around this co-elevation. Can your one of the 71% of teams report that they cannot speak their minds in meetings. Whose fault is that? It's funny because I'm not going to say the name of the company.
And I bet you all these leaders have open door policies too.
They have open door policies, but they also, I was just about to tell you that there's one company that you know the name of very well. I was talking to the CEO, and it was in the meeting, and I was saying, listen, your score right now, you're at a 2.2 on a scale of 0 to 5 relative to this team's courage and candor in the room. And he goes, I know, it's pissing me off. He's like, the team's right there. He's like, I keep telling you all, damn it, you got to speak up in meetings. You got to speak up in meetings, right? And I said, stop it. I said, the number's 2.2. It's your job to get it to 4 in a 60-day period. Let's just call him Ed. It's not Ed, but Ed, if that number's not 4 in 60 days, you have failed as a leader. So stop bullying your team, and you figure out how you're going to get them to speak up in meetings. Now, can you handle that? And he realized very quickly I was right. Right? If your team is skittish and afraid and lacking courage, you don't yell at them for not speaking up in meetings. Sure. I don't know if that sounds like, does that sound like something a frustrated entrepreneur would do? Right. I mean, it's very similar to all of us. And this happens to be a, Fortune 10 company.
So what does co-elevation look like if you're a startup versus mid-size versus a big corp?
Yeah, and again, this is where I know it doesn't make sense, but when I coach a $100 billion company, it's the same coaching as when I coach a unicorn startup. I mean, one of the things we started doing last year was we started trading our coaching for equity for startups. They have to go through a very rigorous process to become one, but there's some companies that I'm really excited about what their disruptive future is. And I'm having such a good time coaching them. And it is no different. I'll tell you, here's the difference. The difference is that if you're dealing with a startup with a group of 20-some-year-olds, they haven't had a lot of work experiences, which could be awesome. Could be awesome because they don't have the mindset associated with a career of 20 to 30 years of having done it a certain way, right? So they're totally open to thinking differently.
You don't have to reverse their thinking.
I don't have to revert. Well, I do.
Or reprogram, I should say.
Because they can still be snot-nosed little shits who have never learned how to team, who never played team sports, right? Who mostly, played individual computer games and coded until they became exceptional at that. And they were recruited by an individual. Now, all of a sudden, they're a VP of technology, right? And they've got to figure out how the VP of technology and the VP of product and the VP of sales co-create something. And they have to realize that means they actually have to get their head out of their coding, right? So that is a different thing to coach somebody to versus coaching them, but it's still coaching in the same direction. Because in the large companies, what I end up having to coach is the assets and the resources aren't yours to maximize. Your job is not to get more of the budget for your department, right? That's what I fight in large companies. Like the marketing person feels they need more money, more budget to do what they want to do. They've never stopped and asked the question, what is the best accretion for shareholder value? Is it that marketing gets the money, or is it that product or sales gets the money? Right? That's a different mindset. So a co-elevating team thinks broadly because in both instances, we all have to cross the finish line together. That's the earmark of a co-elevating team. We have to cross the finish line together. and not you have to cross the finish line with the most bells and whistles.
But in that dog eat dog world mentality that exists in big corporations right now, if you're one of the VPs and you're thinking the way you're thinking, but then all the other VPs are thinking selfishly, and who gets the credit, who's gonna be the first to cross the finish line, right? Like not together, but who's gonna be the first, then I could see how it could lead to some insecurity of you may lose your job because it seems like you're giving away too much credit, or you're going to be passed you're going to be passed over on a promotion because the other guy is taking the credit. How do you reconcile that?
So look, I'm hopeful that you're just being a provocateur and a devil's advocate, and that, that there's enough people who are listening, who are getting this message and it's soaking in, because we keep coming back to the self-centered approach of life and leadership, right? And the reality is, I think we've seen enough that those who act like that are stealing from shareholders, because while you're maximizing for marketing at Ford, Tesla is creating a better company than you. So you're fighting against the wrong enemy here. And you're stealing from shareholders. And I would make sure that if you repeatedly did that behavior in a company I was coaching, you would be fired. And I have been responsible for engineering those firings, because we can't be disruptive if we work in silos. And
I love that answer. No, I agree, which I guess a good segue to that is, we are kind of in silos right now that we're all kind of working remotely during this pandemic.
But that's a choice too, right?
So I was just going to ask, what does co-evolution look like during this time, during a pandemic? So
co-elevation is all about inviting the right people into the room. And here's the room. You and I are right now in a room with thousands of individuals listening in. And a couple of times now I've invited your crowd in, right? I've invited your crowd into my free masterclass on really implementing this in their lives. I've invited anybody who was listening into being that person who would call and say, I can help you with your digital products, or I can do some product research, right? So I've been inviting this crowd in. I couldn't have done that in a physical environment, not in the same way. I didn't have that access. I didn't have that reach. So in a remote environment, there's nothing that stops you from being as collaborative. In fact, I think just the opposite. I think in a remote environment, we can even be more collaborative to a broader set of individuals. You just have to be proactive about it. You can't let collaboration happen after the meeting happens, where everybody said nothing in the damn meeting. Then they walk out of the room and they really start the conversation on the walk down the hallway. Bullshit. That doesn't exist anymore. That's lazy collaboration. Collaboration needs to be in the room, boldly, transparently, and we have a formula for that. We initiate bold collaborations in rooms. We teach leaders how to team out, how to increase candor, how to increase collaboration, how to increase risk-taking, how to increase innovation, how to find growth, how to identify risk. These are things that a new leader in the new world has got to dial up significantly and bring that into their leadership and how they run meetings. And that's what we teach.
And I mean, let's get tactical for a second on coevolution, because I'd love for the audience to really understand how they can implement. Your book has so many different testimonials in there, from Microsoft to Target to Merrill Lynch. What are some of your favorite success stories of coevolution?
So, by the way, co-evolution is not a bad way to phrase it.
Elevation. My bad.
I say that because it is an evolution, right? It's an evolution from an old way of working, but it's an elevation to going higher. But just think about this. What you want to do is you want your team to be committed to going higher together. Going higher together is the mantra of co-elevation. So the question was,
what are some of your favorite success stories of some of these companies implementing?
Merrill Lynch is a business model that is focused on a centralized, bank that manages other people's money, financial advisory, wealth management, and they care deeply about their clients, and they care deeply about each other, which is a nice foundation to build off of. But every financial advisor was pretty much an independent agent, right? They're out there and they're working to serve their clients earnestly. What we brought to the table was the idea of, what if we organized that sales force, that private wealth leader? What if we organized them into peer-to-peer coaching groups, co-elevation groups, right? And we have done this repeatedly. At General Motors, we organized the entire North American sales organization into peer-to-peer co-elevation groups, right? And that work at General Motors was quoted by the CFO as being one of the primary reasons they didn't go back into bankruptcy. At Merrill Lynch, what we found was that those in co-elevation groups got a significant lift in their new accounts. I'm not going to say the specific number, but we're talking about, in aggregate, billions of dollars of value creation. Billions of dollars of value creation. And the story is told in the book, Leading Without Authority. And then there's teams like, worked for a 100-year-old company that was private in the aerospace and defense industry that wanted to go public and was told that that wouldn't happen for a while. We brought co-elevation to the mindset of that executive team with a mind to going private and going public in 1 year. Not only did they go public in 1 year, despite what bankers thought, they found a successor within their midst that the CEO did not imagine. So his next successor has now been named among one of the leaders who stepped up in a way that he did not expect that to occur. And you add to that their stock price went up 20% in a time when the competitive set was struggling. So, I can give you time and time again, and I can't wait. I'm going to get a chance to challenge the Inc. 5000 at their annual meeting this year in the same way. This is my mission. This is my movement. I believe that at the end of the day, we are rebooting leadership over these 4-month period. But I've been calling for this for 20 years. It's just now becoming mandatory.
Why is it so important to you?
I said it earlier. My dad, I remember what it was like to be sitting at the table and watching my proud immigrant Italian father struggle without work. Right? My mom had to become a cleaning lady. I had to go work at the country club. I'm sure you remember some of the stories about Mrs. Poland and caddying and whatever, if you read Never Eat Alone years ago. I committed to myself that I would grow up and I would make an impact on the world of work and families by saving jobs. And, my dad was a UAW steelworker. And the ability for me to be at the table with the executive team of General Motors when the CFO says, the work you did saved a lot of jobs. My dad was a UAW steelworker, United Auto Workers steelworker. Brought tears. I cried. I cried that day. That's why it's important to me. Yeah.
Well, we'll end with this. The workplace is obviously in a major state of, I guess, call it disruption, for lack of better words right now. What do you see as the future?
I see a lot more independent agentry. You know what a gig worker is? The Uber created gig workers and their drivers, right? Now the independent agents out there driving around. I think what's going to happen is I think we're all going to become independent agents, deciding where to plug our talents in. And the leaders and the organizations that can attract the best talent will win. And we can all decide which Zoom call to turn on today, right? Is it the Zoom call of Tesla or the Zoom call of General Motors? Where are we going to decide to turn on the Zoom call? And I am excited to be working with some of these organizations, and getting a front row seat on what it takes to reinvent. But I'm also excited to be able now, because of our digital products and our lower price products that we can offer with other coaches, et cetera. I'm so excited to be able to offer all of this stuff at whatever affordable rate I could do that. I could have never done that before. So for me, the way to serve was to serve the upper echelon because I thought that had the biggest impact. Now I'm excited that I could serve an Inc. 5000 company, right? I can serve a single solopreneur, right? Who wants to put down $1,000 and become this new kind of leader, or just reads Never Eat Alone and Who's Got Your Back and Leading Without Authority, sort of the trilogy of my books. So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled by my ability to make a bigger impact.
Look, so I was definitely playing devil's advocate on a lot of the questions, right? I totally buy into everything you're saying. And I just want to say thank you for letting me and the listeners have that 15-minute cup of coffee that you're not able to give everyone. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this. For the people who want to reach out to you, who want to offer value, who want to just follow you or learn more about the amazing work you're up to, how can they do so?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, we put together an offering for your team.
Yep. I'll link it up in the show notes.
Yeah, keithferrazzi.com/JPort. So I'm excited about joining us that way. You get involved in our email lists. My team calls it a sales funnel. I call it a community. And it really is. So get involved in our community. But I'm also approachable. I'm out there. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can send me an email by just going to keithferrazzi.com and somebody will get that email. And if you have a bold enough offer of how you want to serve the same mission that I'm serving, then I'd be excited about serving your mission. I get excited about people who join our community. Got a new woman now. Full-time job is to be a community manager for us. She's running the work. How do we serve the people who believe in co-elevation? Right? And her job is just to give to that community. Annie is her name, E-N-I. So if you really want to get involved, you'll find your resourceful way to get to Annie through our email and that sort of thing.
Love it. And we'll do our best to help spread your mission as well and continue the good work. Keith, thank you so much for doing this. Jason, I really appreciate you.
Thank you. And you. Cheers.